in chapter 4, which is called Never Give Up-ish, is really my reflection on going, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Because it's like the NBA is not in the cards. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they actually don't know when to give up. You know, every motivational speaker is supposed to stand before a crowd and say, never give up, which in my opinion might be the worst advice you could give a large group of people. I actually think that we should be smart enough to know when we should indeed give up, because by letting go of that thing, you're actually going to find what you're really good at. And so now getting the opportunity to work with NBA teams, NBA executives, and NBA players and thinking about what I do now and how I'm in my sweet spot now, I think, thank God I failed. And I can do this past the age of 35 or 36. And so, Chastity, something that has impressed me about you in your journey is I've seen you walk away from a couple jobs. Okay.
Just a few.
And people go on this journey of going, how all in do I really want to go with this thing? And I think people need to be smart with that, because people ask me all the time whenever I deliver a Chasing Failure message, they'll say, all right, how seriously should I take this? Are you saying I need to take out a second mortgage for this thing? Are you saying I need to quit my day job? And I'm like, hey, don't quit your day job. Okay, make sure you want to make sure that you can quit your day job. But you've actually quit your day job a couple of times to pursue some of the things that God's put in your heart. So what was your process in making some of those transitions?
Yeah, on most of the transitions, it was more so about like burnout. And I think a lot of times when we reach burnout, it could be a combination of a lot of things. You're doing too much too fast, or you're doing the wrong thing. It's like you could feel this overwhelmed because you're trying to tread on the wrong walk, right? And so a lot of the previous transitions was like I was just burned out doing heavy work, working with trauma victims. Those stories start to really get to you. And so I loved doing that, but there was a part of me that was like, I have to find a way that is sustainable for me. And so that's some of the transitions. But my last transition, I actually really loved that job. And so when I went to tell...
And that was where?
At Children's Hospital. I was a children's therapist in a foster care clinic.
Okay.
And even though the work was heavy and you're talking about trauma, it was very fulfilling. But so when I went to go have the conversation with my boss, I was boo-hoo crying. Like, you would have thought that I just lost a dear dog, if I love dogs. You would have thought that it was just the most terrible thing. She was questioning, like, are you gonna be okay after this call? Like, that's how bad I was crying. Wow. But I realized I'm good here, but I also know that there's something greater. Like, I just feel this yearning for something greater. Even though this is good, I know there might be great out there somewhere. So sometimes even when you're like thinking about transitions, it might not necessarily be that you're in a bad position. It might just be that there's something bigger, there's more out there for you to do. And so that last transition it hurt a little bit, but I still knew that this hurt was necessary in order for me to reach what I felt like I was called to do. So, yeah.
In chapter 4, I talk about this sweet spot matrix, and I give, 4 things that sort of make up a person's sweet spot. It's where a person's passion, opportunity, skill set, and purpose meet. And so the questions in this chapter are, 1, what do you want to do? So many people can't figure that out. Like, what do they actually want to do that they have a passion for? The second thing is, what are you good at? Some people undervalue what they're good at. Some people overvalue or overrate what they're good at. And then it's like, is anybody asking you to do it? Do you have an opportunity to do that? And I think the fourth thing, which is the most important thing, is, man, you feel like you were born to do it. And you can have two or three of those things and be in a good spot, but I think all four make it a really, really sweet spot. But I think for our generation and where we see in the American workforce now more than ever, I'm hearing this, I only want to do something I'm passionate about. And sometimes people don't want to do the job before the job.
Yeah.
You know, and like our parents would get a job, and that was it. That was it. They had that job for 30, 40 years, and they retired. There was no, whether they liked it or not, it wasn't even a conversation about it. And so now there is this thing amongst a lot of our peers where it's like, if I don't love it, then you know, I'm just not gonna work. I got 2 kids. I don't have that luxury of going, you know. Now, yes, I do get paid well to do something that I love, and I'm very grateful for that. But there are parts of my job that I don't particularly love that I still do to make sure that, you know, my family eats and that, you know, our bills are paid. Do you see that? With some of your peers, some of your friends, that there is this like dissatisfaction, this discontentment with where they are in life. You talked about it earlier. I think that pressure going into your 30s of like, I gotta make it. Do you feel that pressure?
Oh yeah, like it feels like whatever you're putting your time to, it needs to count for something, you know? And, but I think that's the fallacy of it all, is because what actually is the end goal, like what James was saying before, it was like, you know, we're trying to realize our goals so quickly that every move needs to count. But I think if we have a long-term mindset and understand that, hey, like this thing's gonna go long, you know, and there's building blocks and there's more than just position and money that go into being successful. There's the character part of the aspect of it all. And there's patience, there's wisdom, and all this stuff that goes into it. And so, you know, a lot of the times I think this kind of goes into like the very talented people really kind of achieve very quickly. But a lot of us, man, like we weren't born with those type of gifts. And
wait, when you say a lot of us weren't born with those types of gifts, are you speaking of yourself or you're speaking for people? Because you're one of the most talented people I know in the world.
You know,
like, could you sing for us right now? Just give us 2 bars for, especially for people that are listening. If they're watching, they're gonna get a real good show. But for people that are listening, just give us a little Bruno.
Bruno Mars is on a whole nother level. That man.
Just give us something. Give us Jodeci. What you got? Boys to Men.
Let me get you some.
Give me something.
I don't know how much longer you're gonna be here, so I say my prayers every night. That's because of the Asian.
Okay,
you
so,
know what I'm saying?
everybody except for Chuck.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you need to clarify your statement.
Average land. Chuck, what the world?
You never heard him break it down like that? Oh yeah, Chuck got the butter.
That's a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah. That's a lot of late night phone calls, just trying to talk to some girls.
You mean like, Val? Just Val?
Oh yeah, my wife. Yeah. Love my wife.
Here's what I was gonna add to what you said. I think the biggest enemy out there with that rat race that people feel they're in is social media. I feel that you go on social media, one video makes somebody viral, and you're like, I gotta do it too. I have to hurry up and be the best this, the best that. And it's interesting because when you said about the workforce, my parents are baby boomers, and God bless that generation. Oh, Lord. They have really jacked a lot of us up because...
I thought it was like, oh, they were so great. They screwed it up.
Because here's what I love about them. I love that they have staying power, they're committed, all of that. But you know how many of them have died with dreams? Like, it just dead, done, right? And then at the funeral you hear, did you know that Dave was a great artist? And look at his artwork. And everyone's like, what? But he was a welder for Union 304B for 37 years. Like, what? Why didn't Dave pursue that? because the Great Depression changed the trajectory of all of that. So now what's happening is there's FOMO, there's comparison, and now the wonderful, beautiful, and I'm throwing shade at them, Gen Z is coming up, and they're crying about going to work. They're literally, I was telling James and Chastity on the way in, I'm working with this program right now, and they're presenting to a Fortune 500 company, to Deloitte. Deloitte is having an issue with hiring the new generation. So they are trying to figure out ways how to appease Gen Z. So you know what this kid said this past week? He says, well, what do we do a self-calendar work life, like a workload? And everybody's like, self-calendar? Yeah, you schedule yourself when you want to work, as long as it's 8 hours. So if your bread and butter is 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., that's when you work. And you go and you work. If you want to do morning, and I'm looking at them like, what? No, because again, I was raised by baby boomers.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, no, you go to work at 7 and you get out at 5, right? So I just think that if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for the comparison that people do, I feel like we wouldn't have a lot of this inconsistencies. Because you know what, Ryan? The other thing that happens is when you're inconsistent with your work ethics is a lot about you. And when you're inconsistent with that, it trickles down. Yeah. It's your relationships, how you parent, how your husband, how your wife, how your mom. I just really think that it's all about, people are just never satisfied with like where they are. And it's okay to want more and want better, but when are we gonna be content with, you know what, I'm good right here, average lamb, this guy.
No, I think that's really good. And I think, James, I think about the jobs that you had pre-law school, and people will get your business card in just a few months, or they may see your car in a few years, or your office, or even if you may partner someday and see your name on a building. I don't think that they will see some of those. They won't see the behind the scenes. They won't see the lattes. They won't see the teenagers that you sat with in Frisco for hours and listened to their stories. And all of those things mattered for where you're going now. And I think that's what I want people to understand, that no matter where they're at, the job that they have now is practice ground for the job that they want in the future. Even for you, what did you learn from Starbucks? I mean, it's still one of the top organizations in the world, even if you're just a barista.
Yeah, it might be somewhere, but it wasn't where I was. It was in that store in Louisiana. It was not. It did not feel very. I had this like nightmare of, there was a girl that I dated that lived in Louisiana, and she wasn't far from where, and we'd broken up, and my nightmare was her walking in that store and seeing me with a green apron on, because I was just like. Too tall to hide, so, I can kind of give an overview and then a specific. I remember the day that I was leaning over. I was a shift supervisor, so I'm in there, and I am there's the lowest of the low on the totem pole, and I am just above that. And my job is to tell people when to take breaks, or to, fill out the order, or, give the money to the Brinks guy, or whatever it is. And everybody was mad at me because they all want their own specific break times. They're like, well, I want to take my break now, and you're making, and you've got 6 different people that you're juggling. And so it's just like anything in like leadership or management. And I was just wrecked with some stress because nobody was happy with me. And I remember leaning over into the Frappuccino fridge to grab milk, and I was like, I'm done. Not done with the job. I was just like, I'm done being scared of what they think. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't, at that point, it just broke, and it felt like I had reached a threshold of, I had to be, it's not that I had to be working in a Starbucks as a shift supervisor, but I needed to be subjected to that experience of not really being in a significant place, not in an important situation, just managing some people about drinks or cookies or pastries, and just having that wear away on you to the point where it was like, it just broke. My fear of what people thought about me, or what they thought about how I was leading or whatever, it just snapped. And I wasn't mad. I just leaned and I was like, hey, I need you to go take your break. And they're like, well, no, it's like, I'm sorry, you got to go do it. And it just was a lot. There was a sense of self-security and confidence that came from just having to break through that. As kind of an overview of like, yeah, I worked at like, there was Brahms, there was Starbucks. I was an intern where I had to make calls all day for, and there was like a quota you had to hit, and it was all these cold calls. And it was just like, my resume is not well decorated, but, and I worked as a student pastor for 5 years, loved it, but teenagers will constantly throw you. There was one time where Ryan came and visited me, and Ryan was always just, he was like, why are you a student? Ryan was like, he just could not get his head around it. But he came one time, and he gave his best effort to be nice to this teenager. This teenager comes to me at the front of the stage after I get done preaching, and she's like, oh, I want to, and I could tell she just didn't want to go to her small group. The small group broke out after the message, and she just didn't want to go. And I was like, you need to go to your small group. And she's like, I don't like my small group leader. And Ryan was like, come on, you got to, and he was trying to give his best, like, God, you got to be in your small group. You got to, all the community and stuff. And she was like, I don't like my small group leader. And I said, isn't my wife your small group leader? And Ryan goes, I can't. Walked out. So he saw some of those experiences, and it was like, there was very, very tough moments.
That's like, I'm done.
There's very tough moments with teenagers. But when I kind of look at it, and even still with law school, and I know I'm about to go into a field that it may pay well, but I'm going to be reviewing documents. I'm going to be writing memos. There's still not like glory just on the horizon.
It's not Suits.
No. They constantly break the law in that show. They would all be disbarred. But life has handed me opportunities to be humbled and to learn patience and whatever, but it hands me lessons, and I can choose to ignore them if I want. And so choosing to accept them and say there's purpose in this more than just getting through today, but there's something that I need to learn for the long term has set me up well, especially, most of my classmates in law school, I'm 33, most of them are 10 years younger than me. And
wow.
And kind of seeing the experience of them walking through it versus me walking through it, I can see what it would have been like for me 10 years ago. And I'm extremely grateful that I'm late to it. I'm very grateful that I'm late to it because I was much better prepared for it. And it's kind of like some people, like you say, you're going back to school. And it's like, there's times where going back is going forward. There's times where like going back is the next necessary step.
That's
so it
awesome.
never really felt like oh man, I'm taking a step down. It's just like, I feel like I'm trying to follow whatever God's telling me to do. And so there was a while ago where I remember I was actually on the phone with you when in Louisiana, probably after a rough day. And you called me to tell me like, and I'm getting to meet Kobe Bryant. I was like, what have I done wrong? Like, how am I in New Orleans? We can't serve drinks this morning because a rat got behind the counter.
And my best friend's going to LA.
Going to be Kobe Bryant. And it wasn't like, oh, that should be me. It was just like, I feel like I've taken a wrong turn somewhere. Yeah, I remember feeling that way, but I think somewhere around then I was like, my direction is obedience. And whatever God's telling me to do next, that's my direction. I don't need to figure out what the end goal is. I don't need to know what the end job is. I don't even, at this point, if you were to tell me, like, James, what's your big dream? It's like, I don't really necessarily know what that is. I don't have it yet, or I don't know what's coming. But I do know that obedience is my direction. And so I'll just keep doing that next thing I feel like God's telling me to do. And it has kind of what we talked about. Like it's built character, I hope. It's built, hopefully, some humility, some work ethic, some of these things that, like I said, I look at classmates 10 years younger than me, and I'm like, I would have been in the same position. So there's empathy for them, because I'm like, I get it. That's where I was at. This is a good process.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Lifecast with Ryan Lee. Hey, if you'd like to order your copy of Chasing Failure, you can do so on Amazon or wherever you like to buy books. Also, if today's episode added value to your life in any way, shape, or form, you can rate it, you can share it with a friend, maybe two. You can also drop a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe.